I am the industry for the COI. I'm joined by a couple of our other leadership. I see Tina Vey and Terry Schaefer, who are government chair and vice chair. We've got John, who is our programs chair, and I think a few others that couldn't join us today. So we have some really exciting stuff going on with the COI that is wrapping up and starting up at the same time. So we have our DEIA talent acquisition project, which we started about a year ago. Megan remembers this. And we are in the very final stages of putting the report together and hoping to get that done by the end of the month, so end of the fiscal year. And then we'll be able to roll that out to everybody. Simultaneously, we are starting to think about next year's project. And so we have a proposal up to the board that will get reviewed in early October. And if that gets approved, our project for next year is going to be working with OPM, who is in charge of the USMO for human capital management. And we're going to be helping them with consolidating and analyzing all of the public comment on the new human capital management standards. So they've received government input, but haven't received input outside of government. So they're going to publish those, get a bunch of comments, and then need our support and our sort of unbiased, objective opinions on how to move those standards forward. They affect both government operations and government contractor operations. So it's a really good collaborative project. And so if that gets approved, which we are hopeful that it will, there will be a call for volunteers in the October timeframe. And we're looking for a very small but very dedicated group of individuals that can help on that project. So if you're interested, you can shoot me a note and I'd be happy to talk with you a little bit more about it. We also have some programs like this webinar upcoming. So in November and in January, we will have additional programs. We are going to do, and forgive me because I can't remember which order they're on. I think we're still up in the air on which one is coming in January versus November. But one of them will be on a continuation of the topics that are happening at ELC, which is the large conference in October. Hopefully a lot of you guys will be there and are joining in Hershey. But there is a workforce, what do you call it, Nancy? Work stream?
It's a workforce track.
Thank you, track. And so there will be a lot of great discussion and topics at ELC, and we will continue that conversation in one of these programs that we are hoping to actually do as a hybrid in-person event with an option for online. And that'll be our first time going back in person for 2-3 years now since the pandemic. And we're gonna be able to do some more interactive breakouts and group as opposed to presentations for that. And then we will also have a program upcoming in either November or January to present the results of the DEIA project that we are completing right now. So lots of really cool things on the horizon for sure. Anything else you wanted me to say about ELC, Nancy?
I just want to encourage folks to register for ELC. You will see a lot of our COI leaders there, so hopefully you can come network in person. Conferences are back in person again, and hopefully you will consider attending the conference and hope to see you there.
It's October
23 to 25 in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Awesome. Did I miss anything? No? Okay. Chris, are you ready?
We are as ready as I think we're going to be. Yeah, we can improvise. It's okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to turn it over to John, then he's going to do a quick introduction of our panelists and the program for today. So go ahead, John.
All right. So we're going to demonstrate that we're ready to improvise. So as the program chair, let's quickly get to the actual reason we're here. So I'm the program chair for the Evolving the Workforce Community of Interest, and I'm going to quickly and happily introduce our speakers for today. So Megan Capicel is here at Department of Homeland Security. She's the Associate Chief for Workforce Planning for Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agencies, Office for the Chief Human Capital Officer. His letters. Megan leads the cybersecurity workforce activities there, including workforce planning, some operational research work, career pathing, and also a federal cyber rotation program, amongst other things. She's been with CISA since 2007 in a bunch of different roles, including physical infrastructure protection, as well as digital infrastructure, and also human performance planning. And before DHS, she worked at Booz Allen. We'll go on to the other person here is Christopher Paris, and he's at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And as the senior advisor for the VA's Cyber Workforce Management Office, Chris leads and helps develop multiple different strategies and initiatives for the over 8,000 computer engineers at the VA. To help share these lessons with other agencies, Chris has also established and co-chairs the Federal Cyber Workforce Management and Coordination Working Group. And before joining the VA, Chris had multiple other roles in federal service, most recently at Social Security. So on that note, over to you. Megan and Chris, you're both muted, but you're on.
Thanks very much, John, and thanks for the opportunity to come back and speak with you all. We always enjoy our partnership with the ACT-IAC, Evolving the Workforce Community of Interest, and the continued opportunity to connect with you guys and share a little bit about what we're doing and seeing in the federal interagency. With that, I don't know who is controlling the slides. Next slide, please.
That's a good question. Who is that? Is that Mike? Is that Nancy?
Should be Nancy. Yep. Yeah. Hey, sorry about that. My screen was so small. I was trying to figure out how to maximize it. But yeah, as Megan said, we're super excited to come here because we've spoken to the Evolving the Workforce Community of Interest, I think twice before this. Right in 2019, when we were trying to stand up this group, I think right after we built the Cyber Career Pathways tool, and then now, so it's a fantastic community. Thank you all for the support that you've shown us in the past, and we're excited to talk with you today about the state of the federal cyber workforce report and our multi-year strategy and plan that our working group has put together, and to get your feedback on it. So just a quick agenda for today's discussion. We'll do the kind of obligatory, what's the current threat landscape look like? What's our digital ecosystem look like? What are the challenges that we're trying to address? And then we'll get into data that we are analyzing or have analyzed when it comes to the federal cyber workforce, as well as the national cyber workforce. What's it telling us? From there, we'll get into our working group. And for those who may not have been at the prior two meetings where we did present, we'll go into brief detail about who we are, why we exist, and what it is we're trying to achieve. And then we'll really get into the meat of why we wanted to come and brief you all, which is the findings of an environmental scan that we did with our federal partners, and then how that translated into our tactical vision and the solution sets that we are pursuing between fiscal years 22 and 24. And then lastly, we'll encourage you all to get involved and give us feedback, and open the floor to hear from you whether the challenges that we're covering today are indicative of what you're seeing, or if perhaps maybe we've missed something that we can also incorporate into our report. So with that, before I cover slides that I think were originally meant for Patrick, I want to ask, is Patrick out there?
I think Matt is on too, and might be able to take it.
All right, Matt, would you like to take it?
High confidence in Chris's ability to cover, so.
Okay. Yeah, so just the lay of the land. With COVID and the pandemic,
Chris, can you hear me?
Yep.
I can, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I had to hit *6. I'm still learning. I apologize for Patrick. I've been pinging him all morning, and I don't. He might have got pulled into some other engagement.
No, nothing is more important than this.
I can definitely. No, I'm an engagement with our CIO or something. He tends to get that, and he was actually covering from me because I am unfortunately laid up with. I had an organ removed earlier about a week and a half ago, so I can definitely give some lead-ins, and obviously, Chris, you can fill in some gaps. I did not get these spin-ups, but I can definitely talk to the emerging need and requirement for what we need to do from the cyber workforce area, especially all the good work that we're doing inside of the federal agency. But I think to this slide right here is highlighting some of the challenges, some of the areas that we're growing inside of the vulnerability of the digital ecosystems where, you know, the overall areas, everyone owns technology, everyone kind of goes into, you know, now, you know, 40 years ago, the massive computer could have filled up a huge auditorium, and now everyone basically has a massive computer in their hands. So the speed of cell phones, the speed of areas, everyone is technology advanced. That's kind of the current landscape that we live in right now. They touch internet, they touch URLs and landscape and everything on a daily basis. So the need for a wonderful cybersecurity workforce is more apparent than it has ever been. That's kind of the growing understanding that most of our problems nowadays come from attacks and malware and phishing and all of those types of things. So we need to be more diligent. We need to kind of work towards that going forward.
Yeah, and I would say,
I'll
you know,
pass-
from what we saw and during the last couple of years with the pandemic and this massive shift to remote work and cloud-based infrastructure, IoT, we have such a geographically dispersed hardware and software supply chain that it's created this expanded attack surface. And so we've been kind of trying to play catch up these past few years to make sure that we've got the appropriate checkpoints, the appropriate safeguards in place. You combine this expanded attack surface and this expanded digital ecosystem with a financial aspect, and there's such a it's so enticing for cyber criminals, not just cyber criminals that want to do us financial harm, but also, you know, the political influence that we see from hacktivists and the espionage that we're seeing from nation states. You know, we cover this in the report. During 2020 alone, there's a 238% increase in cybercrime. So the attacks, as Matt mentioned, you know, they're not going to decrease by any means. And if 2020 is any indication, you know, we have to be prepared for numbers like this moving forward. Next slide.
Well, I just wanted to add on top of that, Chris, is
sorry.
the complete shift of organized crime. I mean, 20 years ago, nation state actors or even financial activists were employing tons, 10s, 20, hundreds of people for organized crime to do those types of things, where now they can hire one cyber attacker to really go after and kind of really throw the problem sets into your organizations, into your infrastructures, into your everyday communities. So that's kind of the shift. That's where the current landscape is. So we need to be kind of diligent on our side to be able to protect against that.
Yeah, and what we've seen too, to piggyback off that, is that even the best technology tool stacks, you know, they're not going to stop the breach 100% of the time. We have to rely on qualified talent. Our talent defenses must be armed to match these emerging challenges. So, you know, the sheer number of high-profile incidents over the past year, 2 years alone, it's emphasized that our need for talent is not only overdue, but that the number of professionals continues to fall short of the demand that is required. And so I guess that's a nice segue into this slide, which is, you know, as we rely more on technology to interact with government, the need and demand for this workforce is only increasing. So at the moment, you know, we have some nice graphics here, and I'm sure you've seen these from CyberSeek. We have nationally over 700,000 jobs, cyber jobs that we want to fill in the public sector alone. So federal, state, local, tribal, territorial, you're seeing 40,000. And BLS, so labor statistics, they project that, you know, this discipline, this job market, it's going to grow 13% from 2020 to 2030, which is the faster than the average for all occupations. But some roles, like the information security analysts, are going to grow by as much as 33%. So what we're seeing is that despite our federal cyber workforce growing faster, as you can see in the bottom right, than the rest of government, it's not growing at a rate that is satisfying our current demand. And it hasn't for over the past decade. We can move to the next slide. So if we did a bit of digging further into our workforce data, and we see that we also have challenges when it comes to diversity and skilled demographics. Less than 6% of our workforce, the federal workforce, is under the age of 30 years old, while more than 30 are nearing retirement eligibility. So you couple that with a mix of skills and experience that's heavily weighted on the mid and senior career professionals, with only 6% of occupations or grades at the GS9 level or below. And we have a huge succession planning problem. And unfortunately, no immediate scalable way to get the numbers of entry talent professionals in the door to offset the looming number of retirements. So with nearly 40,000 unfilled jobs in the public sector in a 0% unemployment rate, we have to find ways to stay competitive against the private industry, private sector. We need to be more nimble, more agile against our adversaries. And we need to keep better pace with evolving technology and what that landscape's going to look like 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So we really need to find ways to reduce the barriers to attract and hire entry talent. Find ways that we can enhance the skill portability of our cyber practitioners, not only in our own agencies, but across government. And then look at ways that we can revitalize the way that we engage our employees, the way that we sustain them in federal service. All of which are challenges that we're super excited to talk with you more in detail today. With that, Megan, I'll turn it over to you.
So last week, thanks, Chris. So last we engaged with you guys was quite a while ago, and pre-COVID, and I believe we were operating under the auspice of a Career Pathways Working Group title. Since then, the Cyber Solarium Commission published their first report, and we came together as a community, and we worked on the career pathways, and it was, can't quite remember if we were in development with it or had just published it and were marketing it. But when the Cyber Solarium Commission came out with their report, they suggested an operational arm within the federal government that was a working group. And so they called themselves, or suggested the title Cyber Workforce Management and Coordinating Working Group. So we rebranded ourselves since then, and we now call ourselves the Federal Cyber Workforce Management and Coordinating Working Group as that operational arm. So since the beginning, we've had members of 24 of the 24, or well, in the beginning we had 21 of the 24, but we've since grown, and we do have representation from across all 24 CFO Act agencies and beyond that engage with us. And we continue to partner with the administration and more recently with the Office of the National Cyber Director, as well as with our partners in the CIO Council, the Federal CIO Council, the CHICO Council, and the CLO Councils. So we still continue and maintain the engagement with them, and you'll see their brand and seals on a lot of our products because we are taking what their strategic elements are and incorporating that into the work that we're doing to produce that at the operational level. So inclusive in the 24 CFO Act agencies, and our membership was just comprised of around 250 federal members from across the federal interagency. We consider ourselves the practical implementators of those strategic governance that comes out, whether that's the Federal Cyber Workforce Management Act or the EOs that come out or whatever have you. We are the practical implementators, or at least inclusive of the practical implementators of those requirements. So we see ourselves as that coordinating body to facilitate the changes necessary that come out for cyber workforce management. And our mission is to strengthen and enhance the maturity of the federal cyber workforce collectively. And we often recite our mantra, and as American taxpayers, hopefully everybody can appreciate the do once, help many approach and methodology and concept there. So coming together and seeing these challenges that don't exist uniquely at our different respective agencies, but looking at them, pulling it up a level, 30,000 feet, and seeing them more holistically. And if we want to go to the next slide.
Well, Megan, before we do, I was actually going to say, the last time we spoke with you guys, I think we were around like 115 members, 150 by the end of last year. And since then, we've grown to, as you said, Megan, over 250. So we've increased the size of the working group substantially, over 70% since we last met with you guys. And I also want to harp on what you said with the coordinating piece. We've worked closely with our partners at the Cyberspace Solarium Commission, and when we heard that they were recommending that the Office of National Cyber Director, 1, be stood up, and then 2, lead coordination across the federal government when it comes to standing up an executive steering committee and then a coordinating body, we saw that coordinating body as kind of being our bread and butter. So in anticipation of these structures that would be led, that's why we changed our name. So trying to drop the hint subtly back then to NCD that we were already building this working group that could help support the National Cyber Director's vision for federal cyber workforce. Now we can move.
Yeah, and to that end, we were already doing a lot of the work, and so it wasn't this, IPC level strategic element, but that operational element of executing on those strategic guidance. And so, we saw ourselves already doing a lot of this stuff. And I think the reason why we've continued to grow and we continued, to get inquiries and requests from people to join and be on our distro list and stuff is because we are helping to move the needle for people. And the whole idea was to offset the level of effort required by each agency or department, or within those departments, the different agencies that have to invest in doing these things and with different budgets, and they can move at different speeds to help with that maturity. But to collectively, assess and understand the problem, we'll talk to you in just a minute about the state of the cyber workforce and us hearing from those federal agencies and what we heard and what we're going to collectively do and address about it. But before we move into that, just to take a couple highlights in the work that we've done over the past couple of years, and those are under the pillars: recruit, develop, and retain. So looking, we've taken the requirement to map into code and using the NIST-NICE framework, and we've helped standardize coding and mapping governance. We're only ever as good as the interpretation of the information there and the data to support that. So helping to mature everybody's context and understanding of the requirements in the NIST-NICE framework, as well as publishing documentation that can help uniform and standardize an approach and commonality among our different agencies into recording that information so we can understand the problem more closely. DoD and Department of Labor working cyber interest quizzes. And so that's still in the works, but we're excited about that. And that's going to be available on, for sure, the NICS website, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Careers and Studies. It is a CISA domain, as well as other domains where it will be featured to include open opportunities, I believe, or cybercareers.gov. So we'll have those featured in different areas, but still working to finalize those, and candidates, whether they're new to the industry or looking to reskill or upskill, can go there and take a quiz and see if this is the right work role and fit for them. So excited about that and the prospect of that. We worked in 2021, had an action team that was dedicated to developing position descriptions, federal position descriptions, and the corresponding job announcements. Chris was the co-chair over that work stream, and they produced a report with different templates for the federal interagencies to use and consume. We are expanding on that and going to be making these global NIST-NICE position description tools available over the coming year, building upon the work that was already done there. The action team that I led that same year was with regard to behavior-based interview questions. So Executive Order 13932 came out and is requiring us to do a multifaceted, multi-pronged approach to assess candidates' talent. We don't want to focus on the soft skills. We want to, in our effort, was to focus more on those technical skills. So, when rubber meets the road, really, where do these people stand and fall in line versus what's actually in their resume? So we worked as an interagency and closely with OPM to develop these behavior-based interview questions, and are continuing to expand on those and add those to our resource library. Another tool that we have and are working to grow is with regard to data tagging. So as the federal requirement is all positions were reviewed across the entire federal interagency, and the corresponding NICE code or the all zeros code was assigned to each position. And so we are working with OPM in USA Hire or USA Staffing to do the data tags. And we've, it's not a requirement as of right now, but through the work of our interagency working group and our partnerships, we've, though it's not a requirement, people are going in and tagging their job announcements to the different work roles. And on our Cyber Career Pathways tool that's on the NICS website, if you go into each one or any one of those different nodes that is to represent that work role, you can see in the details section, it links out directly to USA jobs. So the idea is that a lot of jobs are under the auspice of the 2210 InfoSec, 2210 occupational series with that InfoSec parenthetical. And as opposed to opening up each one of those to try and figure out which work role that correlates to, the data tags are allowing them to call that list down and focus more directly. So hoping that leads to better quality candidates and hires, as well as perhaps some less frustration in terms of people who especially are new to government and don't understand exactly how to navigate. It's a quick tool and solution for them. Expanding on the behavior-based interview questions and the assessments process, we are looking to expand on our work for that. That's going to underpin thing and work for the executive order. So that is also forthcoming this coming year. In terms of development, so we have the Cyber Career Pathways tool, and hopefully everybody has it bookmarked. Maybe Chris, as I'm talking, you can pop it in, the link that's there so everybody can bookmark it, should it not already be. But it's a great resource, and we continue to work with OPM to update the data that you see in there, so it does stay pretty relevant and up to date, and that we're continuing to evolve it. One of the areas that we're focusing on next is going to be videos. So next to each work role, it's going to be mission agnostic and department agnostic, but hearing from practitioners in those work roles. And so that as opposed to just reading and consuming the work that we've done to whether that's for the career pathways or just about the work role, but you know, they can see themselves in the work role and really get a good idea for exactly what that work role does. But we're excited to share, we've had over 100,000 views on that website, which is embedded within the larger NICS website. And so we hope that continues to grow, and we can continue through you all to help us market and share that this is a resource for candidates or prospective candidates. So when we created the career pathways, you know, we looked at the tasks as written in the NIST-NICE framework, and we worked with practitioners and subject matter experts from across the interagency to define what those permutations of those tasks were. And so through that, the output of that was part of the career pathways, and we've been working to develop the training learning objectives specifically for each one of those work roles, for each of those tasks and the permutations thereof. So that is going to be used to inform curriculum development, and we've been excited to share and publish that information as well. And just the growing community that we continue to create. If you are not aware, there is an open opportunities website that OPM hosts and maintains. And so that's something, whether you are, most likely is for people who are already in the federal government, and we're looking to expand and grow on that. And Chris will talk to you in a second about another endeavor that we have that is going to be housed under that open opportunities website, but looking to continue to grow our membership there. And that way people who sign up in that website can continue to get those announcements from their portal directly. So if you haven't already, it could be something to consider or share. Under retain, so continuing to grow our cyber retention community of practice and look and focus on retention aspects. We are producing a cyber retention report. So it's going to be discussing different attributes about retention and where we are and where we see ourselves going. And recently, this summer, over the past year, there was a handful of agencies that came together to request a special salary rate. The VA actually led the submission with OPM. We worked hand in glove with the OPM team to make sure we understood the requirements. We are expecting that to be very successful. And so what that's going to yield is, for sure, hopefully a special salary table for 2210s in the DC metro area, but more broadly looking at the entire metro area list and expanding to all of those. So the great idea there is that it's going to help at least get us closer to a relative market average to be competitive with private sector in terms of salary and just pay itself. And that will lead to more, and Chris talked to you in the previous slide about, you know, how that triangle's kind of inverted right now and upside down. And we need to grow that base out. And something that just anecdotally I will share with you, we found is that, you know, those lower GS levels can be upwards of 40 to 50% away from market average. So hopefully that will entice more people to choose a career in public service and come to the civil service at those lower grades, and we can be more competitive. Next slide, please.
Hang on, before we move, I'm going to give you a break because that was a heck of a lot of content to cover, so thank you. For those that are with us who may not be as familiar, I think we just took it upon assumption that you are aware of the NICE workforce framework. The federal government, as of 2016, has been required to look at the NICE workforce framework for cybersecurity and align its positions that perform information technology, cybersecurity, or cyber-related functions to at least one of these work roles. So for the last, 6 years, we've been, grappling with what does that mean for us? How do we take these work roles and integrate it into a 2-decade-old occupational series, largely, the 2210? Now, I'm going to take a step back there and say the NICE framework is not specific to the 2210 OC series, but the 2210 OC series, information technology management, is where we see within the federal government the majority of our cyber practitioners. So we really had to address, how do we use these kind of two systems, the occupational series that has 11 parentheticals or variants versus the NICE framework, which has 52 different variants of the types of cyber roles that you can perform. So as as Megan mentioned and was going through all these resources that our working group has built, she dropped the NICE framework in there a lot. So much of what we do is taking that framework and showing our partners, our HR specialists, our hiring managers, our practitioners, how we can improve on existing human capital functions by integrating that framework. So, from announcement tagging, so just not describing every announcement by an IT specialist, but saying, hey, no, this is actually a position that's looking for individuals with skills in cyber defense, incident response, or software development, or cyber policy and strategy planning, to be more specific with the way that we attract and advertise the positions that we have open, all the way to the assessments that we can administer to see if someone has the technical proficiency that they say they do in their resume. You see within the development column here, the Cyber Career Pathways tool. The NICE Workforce Framework, when originally introduced, and even still, it's a special publication that's many pages long. People coming out of high school, colleges, even those in cyber positions may not resonate with a PDF so much as they would resonate with a very interactive tool. So that's what we took upon ourselves, to try to take the NICE framework and make it digestible. How does someone understand the work role, see the relationships between this role and in another role? How does that pave the way for them to plot, multiple stops along their career journey? So much of what we've been doing is just making the NICE workforce framework usable within existing human capital practices, from hiring, attracting, hiring, developing. How do we develop the training with the learning objectives, to how do we develop recruitment programs that are based on the cyber role that you perform? I just wanted to make it known that this is the framework that we've been kind of living and breathing for the last 6 years. And so all of our resources have, kind of held that up and shown new ways that we can improve on our human capital practices, leveraging that framework. All right, now we can go to the next slide. So this is the real meat of the presentation, despite being 42 minutes into this call. At the tail end of 2021, around November timeframe, we wanted to conduct an environmental scan. We wanted to go out to our partners within the working group, all of our 24 CFO Act agencies, and offer an opportunity to sit down with each one of them and say, what challenges are you faced with right now when it comes to your cyber workforce, the way that you attract, the way that you hire, develop, retain, et cetera. What's working, what's not working, what existing personnel constructs or policies are serving as a barrier, and how can we overcome them? So one of the primary goals was to document all the challenges and then identify the ones that were shared. Identify the areas that if we could just give some resources and focus to, would move the needle, not just for that agency that we're meeting with, but across the board for as many partners in our working group as possible. So with the result of the environmental scans was actually multiple ideation sessions that focused in kind of these key areas here, from the talent perspective, the development perspective, the workforce infrastructure perspective, and so on. We held separate ideation sessions where we invited everyone in and said, here's the challenges that we're seeing for this area. What are some possible solutions? Just throwing spaghetti at the wall, what's gonna stick? And from those sessions was born our State of the Federal Cyber Workforce Report, but more importantly, our multi-year strategy and concrete implementation plan that contains the vision, the goal, the objectives, and the actual solution sets that we'll talk with you in a moment, but the solution sets that are gonna enable us to drive progress in some of these areas. So with that, some very key findings that we found, and we've touched on them a little bit, but a lack of entry-level talent. You saw in the data, we've got less than 6% of individuals occupying GS9 and below grades. We've got an aging workforce that is very close to retirement eligibility, and we're competing right now with industry for a very limited number of cyber talent. So we need to find new ways to prioritize how we build the front end of our pipeline. Moving into role-based skills development and tools. We have the NICE framework. The NICE framework has 52 different ways to describe someone who does cyber work. Each of those roles, each of those different ways includes tasks. It includes knowledge and skills and competencies. So how do we arrive at a solution or solutions that are aligned to this framework that allow us to develop the technical skills in someone that not only meets our individual agency needs, but also enables them to take those skills and bring them across different agencies and ideally into the private sector? Really developing portable skill sets. I think of it as like a skills passport. If we all speak the same language and I can describe to you what I'm skilled in, then I should be able to take this passport and have some reciprocity, as I move throughout my career at different organizations, different agencies along the way. Then we saw a lot of challenges around our workforce or our workforce infrastructure. I mentioned that our 2210 Information Technology Management Occupational Series is over 2 decades old. It was developed at a time when technology and security certainly were kind of burgeoning domains or disciplines. We didn't have as much information about them as we do now. So it doesn't make sense to continue to talk about them the way that we did back then. And so right now we are continuing to grapple with how do we apply this new, relatively new workforce framework that has all these different ways of describing the skills we need with this older occupational series. Couple that with our qualification requirements for 2210s. To have to need a bachelor's or a master's or a PhD at some of these lower general schedule grades really serves as a barrier to individuals that didn't have either the desire, the opportunity, the money to pursue a traditional four-year educational route, and instead maybe are self-taught, are transitioning out of the military, went to a 2-year technical school or community college. How do we open the aperture to really just go more towards a skills-based hiring and say, if you've got the skills, then we want you. and allowing our qualification policies that we set in place to serve as a quick way to intake that talent and not as a barrier. Moving on to workforce metrics. Sorry, Megan, did you want to say something?
Well, I mean, I'm happy to take the last two if you want.
I like those, but go ahead.
Well, I'm leaning an action team for this one, but it's so another thing we heard is just there's a disjointed approach for the workforce metrics. So, you know, whether that's the different attributes and how we're defining as federal agencies, we have we're customers of different, you know, pay solutions and different, just different systems to manage all of our data and information. And so we've been approaching how we're reporting and understanding the larger. So I talked to you before about, you know, taking a step back and not just looking at our own agency and challenges, but the macro picture of it all. And so we've been defining things in different ways, using different attributes to assess and evaluate. And so there's just been a decentralized approach to understanding all of the problems for us to be able to really monitor the challenges and truly understand where those challenges are and reside, for us to be able to make, you know, figure out which levers we need to pull based on those challenges to make progress. So we're going to address that in the next slide and what we're doing as a solution for that. And then other things we heard was the disparities in employee recruitment and retention. And so different agencies and different missions have different budgets and ability to address some of these challenges holistically. And so we've just seen and heard that there's different inconsistent offerings with pay. And we previously spoke to you on the last slide about the special salary rate. But currently a lot of, and maybe you've heard this, but we've employed a lot of retention incentive programs, but there's varying degrees of success to get budget for those, to fund those retention incentives, which are not part of entitlement pay, but are bonuses in addition to that, different other benefits and offerings that people have. So just the inconsistency among the different federal agencies, whereas if you look at, for example, retention incentives, it's governed by, you know, Part 575 Subpart C is addressing the likely to leave for other for private sector. And we see a change in behavior across the federal landscape because people are leaving for other federal agencies, which is common in roles like, for example, 201s, which is human capital specialists, right? You're trained in federal HR, and so you're leaving for other federal HR agencies, and it remains a government-wide mission critical occupation because there is a lot of movement and flux with the HR professionals. But we've seen a change in behavior for 2210s, whereas they were leaving predominantly for the industry because industry has a lot more enticing pay packages and benefits and stock plans and total compensation ability to, I mean, there's no ceiling on it. And now we're seeing a lot of movement within the federal interagency for the haves and the have-nots in terms of, you know, who can get budget and stuff to do and affect a lot of the programs that others can. So just a lot of inconsistency and disparity with that. Anything to add, Chris?
Yeah, if you can go back. I will, the one thing I wanted to add is that on the recruitment front, we oftentimes kind of overlook the experience as we bring someone into federal government and place them in position. We overlook the importance of the onboarding process and really setting someone up for success, bringing them in, introducing them to a network of peers, making them feel like they're part of something, giving them challenging and meaningful work activities right off the bat, making them feel a part of a cadre or a cohort. So there was programs a couple of years ago that were stood up to try to bring anyone hired in the last year to a federal orientation program, an onboarding program, if you will. So there's things like that, as well as what we're seeing from the digital core out of GSA, where it's really taking individuals out of four-year institutions, but potentially in the future, it could be out of high school or two-year programs, and bringing them in a shared way and saying, you're part of something. welcome to the federal government. We value your expertise. This is what it means to be a cyber practitioner in government. Here's the network that you can move forward with in your career. And here's all of the opportunities that are at your disposal because a lot of these skill sets are portable in nature if we come to think of them in that way. So with that, we can move to the next slide. All right. So this really gets into the implementation plan of the report that we built. So we identified, the current state, the cyber landscape, the data, the challenges. What do we want to do about it? And so what we're showing here is like the highest level, the most optimistic, maybe a little bit naive view of what we want to create. In the report, as you'll see, we go into more tactical objectives and individual solution sets as part of different phases that we want to pursue. But at the most aspirational level, on the HR front, we really want to build or establish a cadre of basically cyber HR ninjas, folks who are so well versed in the NICE framework and current, the current challenges between the framework, using the framework and using occupational series, as well as existing flexibilities, that they can serve as these expert guides to other HR specialists throughout the federal government, showing them how we can use the work roles to write a better PD, which will flow into the job analysis, which will flow into the job announcement and the assessments we can administer. But for individuals at other agencies to kind of have this key group of very well-educated folks when it comes to the framework and its uses to fall back on and hold up as a model. Megan, is there anything you would say there from the HR front?
Oh shoot, I was responding to Drew in the chat.
We need to have a little signal.
No, I think it is, and when Chris spoke previously and just kind of backing up, which I'm sorry if I was talking past everybody, and sometimes we forget here in the federal government, use acronyms and just assume that everybody understands everything we're saying. So when we talked about the release of the NIST-NICE framework and how we're using that as our North Star to help guide all the activities and work that we're doing, do once help many as the community and make sure we're all operating from the same sheet of music and same common standards and expectations. It's inclusive of the HR community. And, there wasn't training for the classification specialists, for example, that when this went out on those different NIST-NICE work roles. And really, we just want to harmonize all of our efforts because we can't perform our missions without the teams to bring them on and help retain them that are in that HR community. So focusing efforts really on cyber HR.
And some of the concrete actions that we want to take in the interim until we can realize this vision is, helping our community as well as the HR and hiring managers kind of demystifying what we mean when we say cyber. Because what we've come to learn is that when you say cyber, everyone has a different kind of understanding of what that could mean. For us, it means the full workforce. Anyone who's doing an information technology job, a cybersecurity job, a cyber-related job, those who are in kind of emerging and critical technologies like AI and machine learning and software engineering, data analytics, data science, all of those have a cyber component to it. So helping really just establish the common denominator that this framework and the new roles that we'll add to it, they can address these emerging and critical technologies that all can be represented under the framework. Other actions include, building a cyber position to work role coding quiz or tool. We've learned over the last couple of years, it's been very difficult for hiring managers as well as HR to look at the framework, to look at the 52 different roles, and that number of roles is only going to continue to grow, and make the best educated guess as to which role aligns to my position or which role should I be looking for to build my position. So, developing a tool set that's going to make it easier, answer a couple questions, be directed to a subset of roles, and then guidance from there on how to use those roles. Another thing we want to continue to do is partner with OPM and build out cybercareers.gov as a central hub for all things cyber career related. You know, if you're interested in joining federal government or federal cyber service, go to cybercareers.gov. It won't, you know, it won't be, everything won't be housed there, but we will have links out to every relevant resource that you'll need to plan out your career, whether you're a student, whether you're an existing employee, whether you're someone who's trying to get a job, or whether you're a hiring manager. And then one of the more aspirational actions that we as a tri-chair or tri-chairs of this working group want to take is to partner with key policymakers to promote and adopt the federal cyber qualifications policy and model. The 2210 Information Technology Management Occupational Series is an administrative series. It's not a professional one. Again, that was developed over 20 years ago, and I think we are at a point now where we understand the technical proficiencies and skills that someone needs, to the point where, you know, if we make it a professional series, we can tack on some very relevant qualification requirements for individuals in these various roles. Moving to the workforce data front, Megan, I'll let you take this since you're leading the action team right now to move out on these actions.
Yeah, so we are, as an action team, partnering with OPM to create that centralized dashboard and data set or model. So looking to define the different attributes and what those mean, create measures and key performance indicators as a result of this, that we can look at this dashboard and, you know, it can serve as something like a whack-a-mole type thing, right? So there could be an example that I like to use oftentimes is if you just look at vacancy rate, that might not mean that there's a supply chain problem. That might not mean that the talent doesn't exist. That might actually mean that there might be some vacancies in the HR organization and things aren't getting posted fast enough, right? So the data set is and the data, the dashboard that we're looking to create from this under that same lexicon and same terminology and understanding about the way we're going to look and assess and define those different attributes. And then that's going to serve as indicators of where we need to dig deeper for us to get some insights and then figure out which levers we need to pull and how we as a federal working group can use this data to inform the strategic level. The Office of the National Cyber Director, here's what we're seeing, and we can speak with just a collective voice and understanding. So working to, over the next 6 months, to define all of that, put together a report and come up with the ideas that we need for policy or strategy to support and substantiate it.
And if we move to the development front, you'll notice this mention of a federal cyber academy or federal cyber training institute. This is kind of our pie in the sky idea of, if we don't have the talent right now and the supply isn't there, and it won't be for some time, then how do we build our own bench? How do we take military schoolhouse models that the DoD have perfected? How do we bring that to the civilian agencies that are in Title V? And in doing so, how do we also offer another non-traditional route into federal cyber service? So I imagine, you know, us going out to high schoolers who are about to graduate or those in the community colleges and saying, come to us, we will train you, we will give you a job, we will put you through, you know, a multi-year development process that at the end will, you know, result in you being a qualified cyber defense analyst or you know, a qualified network operations specialist, giving you the skills and the experience to make yourself super marketable in a couple of years, not only to other federal agencies, but also to private industry. So building the training institute that can not only serve as the front end of our pipeline, or at least the accelerator to building the front end of our pipeline, but also for mid and senior career practitioners who need to come back every year and get the training and hone their skills, learn what the latest tools and technologies are to make sure that they're staying abreast of, you know, the evolving landscape. So I think if we can arrive at a common understanding of what the roles are through the frameworks like the NICE Workforce Framework, we should be able to standardize the way that we train our individuals and build our own bench from within. Moving to the recruitment front, I kind of touched on wanting to provide an experience that is a bit more organized, but a bit more intentional. And if we're going to focus especially on the incoming talent and the talent that we need at more entry levels, then we need to show them the path not only into government, but what the path can look like once they're in. Not abandoning them and just putting them in a basement or an office cubicle and saying go forth and be fruitful, but setting them up for success. So making sure that they understand who their mentors are or how to get a mentor, who their peers are, how to network with their peers, how to explore training and professional development options, really kind of just re-energizing this whole process to think in a more cohort or cadre-based way. And some of the other actions that we want to take there is, creating materials that would support role-based interview assessments. We already kind of touched on that, but making sure that we can, if you say that you're skilled in on your resume in a certain cyber discipline, then the assessments that we administer should be able to validate that. We should be able to ensure that we're not just setting these positive education requirements as the sole barrier into federal service, but actually looking at what you can bring from a skills perspective. And then from a tri-chair leadership perspective, looking at how we can advertise our job announcements better. We already mentioned moving past just IT specialists and talking more about the roles that someone's going to actually perform. And then from if it's recruitment, looking all the way to retention, implementing that special salary rate and reducing the disparity between what we're able to offer in terms of compensation and what industry can offer, making it more attractive to not only pursue, but remain in federal service. Megan, any comments that you would add there?
On recruitment?
In general, yeah. I want to get to the next slide and then open it for questions because I know we've been talking for what feels like a very long time.
No, I don't. I mean, I could always add things, but we can keep going.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Some of the ongoing projects that we are working on right now include, as Megan mentioned, that special salary rate, which we did submit. VA submitted to OPM in July. Our understanding is it's being reviewed by the OPM director, and a decision hopefully will be made sometime this calendar year. Fingers crossed. But that would reduce, or we set out that request to close the paid gap right now by 60%. So moving federal government within at least 60% to what market can currently pay. The shared hiring action effort. So looking at how we can take a work role of critical need. Every year agencies submit to OPM their workforce data saying, hey, these are our critical need cyber roles. And we want to take that data and we want to develop a shared hiring action where the government, multiple agencies can sign on to a single announcement and say, we are looking for talent in these work roles, and conduct a hiring event where we can take as many people as possible, get them to apply for an announcement, administer some technical assessments, some cognitive and behavioral assessments, and very quickly get qualified talent in the door to close that work role of critical need across government. A cyber professionals community. So Megan mentioned there's this platform that OPM runs called Open Opportunities. Within it, we have a community that we've built called Cyber Professionals, and it's meant to be this central hub for professional development across the federal government. So think of micro assignments, project-based assignments, rotations, details. If you have it, you can post it, and we wanted to create a contest that will launch in the first week of October. So it coincides with National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And it's really to drive awareness and primarily adoption of this platform and this community. So we'll pick 4 winners, 2 agency winners and 2 individual winners, but it's really based on, how many people can you send to the community? How many posts, professional development opportunities can you create? How many discussions can you get started? But really just trying to energize this community and make it that focal point for professional development. Megan, I'll let you take the last 2. Sorry to hog that.
Nope. So the addressing the cyber workforce dashboard. we have the action team. It's a 6-month action team. And so, as I mentioned, that we're trying to define those requirements and working with OPM. They already have some dashboards created and kind of finessing and evolving those to address those challenges. And I mentioned, and I even wrote in Drew's comment here, there's something called the work roles of critical need as part of the Federal Cyber Workforce Assessment Act. And GAO has requirements to assess and evaluate us. And as part of that, OPM published some guidance where we have to do root cause analysis. So the idea with this dashboard and the work that we're doing to create the different measures and eventually KPIs from that is hopefully going to address and help us identify where those challenges are and have a standard set of solutions that, you know, the different levers that we can pull to help address those challenges. So we'll be continuing to work over the next 6 months and publish a report on that and get the dashboard up and running in our partnership with OPM.
Excellent. Next slide. All right, I am looking forward to this slide because this is where we can stop talking and we can actually hear from you all. We're happy to share this report with you. And we just ask that you do not share it out, don't write any articles about it, at least until October 13th. There's kind of a media embargo on it, as we will be, the tri-chairs, leading a roundtable with our media outlets on October 12th around this exact topic. And we want to make sure that everyone has the same opportunity to you know, support the effort and write for their outlet. Nancy, would you mind going to the next slide? Unless my screen is frozen. Yeah, so in addition to reading the report, we'd love to get your feedback and happy to get your feedback here too of what we might have missed, or is this what you're seeing as well? So kind of a validation of our efforts. And if you're a federal employee or a federal contractor, we encourage you to join the working group, and we have a max.gov page that I'll post the link in the chat. You are more than welcome to explore that and see all the resources that we created. But super appreciative of this yet, you know, another opportunity to come back to the Evolving Workforce COI and share with you what we're doing and also to get your input. So Megan, barring any final comments, I'd love to open it up to the group. Do you have any?
I don't. I'm hoping that you guys can see, you know, that I think we've been very successful because we continue to remain solution oriented and addressing the problems and you know, without a mandate. And we have no mandate, we have no budget. This is a group of us coming together and continuing to look at the guidance and governance that comes out, how we can collectively address this, which ultimately helps the interagency to understand the challenges and problems, but come together to create solutions that are in working together saves the American taxpayer money. And so, you know, we take ourselves very seriously despite the lack of formality. And it's noticed by those in those higher strategic roles, Office of the National Cyber Director, Cyber Solarium, those different councils that we work with. They continue to come to us and recognize not the tri-chairs, but the whole working group and the body of work that we're doing. And we put a lot of thought and rigor into our report, the State of the Cyber Workforce Report, as well as thoughtful consideration about how we can address these challenges and move the needle, not just addressing low-hanging fruit and quick solutions, but really getting to the meat of a lot of these problems and challenges that exist. So hopefully that comes across to you guys.
Yeah, and I
Awesome.
apologize. I also wanted to ask Matt. Matt, I know first, thank you for covering for Patrick. And do you have any comments that you'd like to end with?
It's okay. I know no, I think I want to appreciate all the engagements and the discussions and look forward to the questions. And I want to make sure that we leave enough time for that. But I want to kind of piggyback off of what Chris and Megan said. This audience, this organization that we kind of lead with the tri-chairs is really important because we don't know what we don't know. So going out and touching all of the federal interagencies and getting those the challenges and areas that we can assist with, that's important to us. And that's kind of the areas and participation that we're looking for. So It's really exciting work. It's a kind of grassroots effort, like Megan mentioned. So we're really looking forward to 2023. I think we can get a lot of ground covered and a lot of action-based solutions kind of pushed into the environment to really help our workforce partners.
Excellent. Thanks, Matt. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I think with that, why don't we open it up? Because we'd love to hear from you guys. I mean, you have different clients and customers potentially that you work with in the federal government or have worked with in the past. Is what we've said wildly, left field or totally off base? So we'd love to hear your thoughts or comments, or if you want to share any anecdotes or ask questions. So here's one in the chat from Mark Smith, who I think we know. In the midst of the great reshuffling and resignation, what do you believe is one of the most critical things the federal government can do to recruit and to keep long-term cyber and technical talent in needs to perform its critical mission? And I can start with some of that, and then I'd be happy to pass it over, Chris, to you or Matt, if you guys want to build on it. But I don't think, especially for CISA, I don't think we have a goal that we're looking for people to necessarily stay 20 years hardcore with the federal government. The federal government gets a lot of benefit from people moving in and out of private sector or in and out of public sector back to the private sector. One, because it carries our mission and the work that we're doing to help expand upon people's awareness of some of the larger challenges or the things that they might not otherwise have had insight to. So it helps in that regard, as well as the fact that the speed at which private sector can pivot and change and train and has budgets in some cases to do work can outpace that of the federal government. And so getting the perspective from both sides brings a lot of value to our national security and understanding of those challenges, and building that network, which for as big as the community of practice is here, can also be small. And so I don't think we have a goal at building out people that do stay 20 years. We're always going to have those people, and those people are also important, but the ability to move in and out, I think, is also. So I certainly think we're looking for people to stay longer than 1 or 2 years. But with that, I think, finding some sweet spots, and it might make sense for different work roles, and what those sweet spots are might vary. And we're looking at just understanding what that is. And that's a long-term project for us to study and see what makes sense and what we're looking for in longevity of somebody's commitment in their public service, or if they're boomerang and come back. Kurt, I don't know, I keep saying Kurt, he's on my team. Chris, or you or Matt have any thoughts?
Yeah, just a couple of things that come to mind are, besides the pay, right? We need to pay better. So once we have the SSR in place, I think that'll make things a lot easier. But I also think we don't do a good job of getting the word out that federal government is a place to really perform cyber work. Besides DoD, besides CISA, besides NSA, and some of the other 3-letter agencies, I don't know if everyone understands that every agency has a fairly robust technology and cybersecurity workforce. I often, I feel like a broken record because I say to Megan and Matt very often that, I watch an advertisement that DoD puts out. Now I want to work on a nuclear submarine, because they do such a darn good job of selling the mission and selling the roles that you can perform. I'd love to get to a point where it's common knowledge that government has all these different roles, these different opportunities that you can perform. We make it easy for you to get in. We, make it very clear, because we've developed the infrastructure to support it, how we can train you and how we can offer you a myriad of professional development opportunities. So whether you stay with us, or as Megan mentioned, you go back to private sector, we're giving you those skills that you can take with you. And then I'd love to make it easier for you to get back in. It needs to be this revolving door, so that if you want to have, a tenure that looks a lot different than our grandparents, our processes are set up to support that. Matt, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'll just quickly do is, and we've kind of alluded to it through the strategy and stuff like that. But from a governmental perspective, we have to change some of our mindsets, our cultural shift, our area about how we do about hiring. I think we were even going down that pathway prior to the pandemic, where technical expertise, individuals from a younger perspective don't necessarily, aren't attracted. So we need to be able to be proactive and go out and recruit them. But with the pandemic, it has shifted things like telework, other areas of flexibility, things like that. We really need, from a governmental perspective, to think outside the box. Chris mentioned pay. I don't think we'll ever be able to really necessarily get to the state of what industry pays for technical talent. We might, up ours, and then industry will up theirs, and it's just kind of the seesaw battle. So we have to think of other ways to attract talent. Chris mentioned mission, that is a critical aspect, but think more junior, entry-level developmental, those types of things. So it's just really coming up with areas that we can be flexible from a governmental perspective to really go after the skill sets that we need. And I'll pause there because I think Michael had another question.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, Matt, and maybe I'm going to lob this back to you, and kind of combining what both Katie and Michael have questions on is, Michael says some surveys have suggested federal job applications can be intimidating to lesser experienced applicants because of the focus on experience and their technical competencies. So how do we balance attracting that talent pool to the government with pure technical assessments? But just to kind of correlate that to what Katie's question is, we're focused a lot on the challenges that we see and we hear, but where are things that the federal government is doing right? So I don't know if you want to talk and maybe address that and maybe what the DoD is doing with regard to that. And I'm happy to share some thoughts on CTMS. And Chris, if you want to add to that, did you want to take that first?
Yeah, I think I'll kind of touch a little bit. Chris mentioned earlier qualification program. What we're trying to do from a DoD perspective is get away from some of that overall degree requirements, expertise, individuals, past experience, those types of things, and open the aperture to really bring in other talent. So 8140 policy series is out there. Eventually it's about to be signed, fingers crossed soon. But it opens the aperture to be able to qualify your workforce in kind of 4 different areas. Experience is definitely one of them. The other ones is training, education, and certifications. So really what we want to be able to do is allow more of the hiring managers flexibility in bringing in other talent, because we know from a technical perspective, it doesn't necessarily everyone doesn't take the same pathway to get to their final end state. So we want to make sure that we're attracting everyone. We need to go out there and actually try to bring those individuals in. And Michael, to your point about assessments, we completely agree. What we want to be able to do, and we're currently in the process of developing an aptitude assessment where we can actually go to job fairs, go to high schools, go to universities, things like that, and we can kind of get into putting this types of skill sets of an aptitude assessment in front of individuals to see their capabilities, to understand where their strong suits are, and be able to attract the best talent so that we can find the individuals out there. So, they might be working in other functional areas, other areas of expertise, but they might have the ability to transition over to cyber. So we want to develop these tools that all of our components can ultimately leverage to really find those individuals out there and kind of attract them at the end state of where we need to go. So those are kind of 2 areas that we're kind of focused on. I know Chris will kind of expand on some of the areas the VA is doing.
I'll give Megan an opportunity for you to mention what you had already, I think we're alluding to, which is CTMS.
Yeah, so even before I get into CTMS, a federal recruitment is and vacancies is a very expensive process, especially with security clearances and the time to hire. With that, I mean, if you put all of that and some earned value management work on that, it's a very expensive process. So that's another reason we don't want to just have people come for 1 or 2 years. But the last thing that we want is somebody to come because, we talked a little bit about varying degrees of understanding information in the HR community, and if that's corresponded to the job announcement that somebody applied to, and not having clarity there. So working on candidate assessments that are more technical to make sure that those things align, because the last thing we want is somebody to finally make it on board after such an expensive process and it not be for a job or a role that they thought they were applying to and understood it to be, and then leave shortly thereafter. And how attrition in the first year is something that here at SPISA especially we monitor and take very seriously, because that says there's been a lot of challenges and a very expensive process to get that person here. And so we want to make sure that they understand what they're applying to, so that once they're on board that they feel fulfilled and not disenfranchised. But I think that working on our job opportunity announcements is something that we're doing right, and we're looking to expand that to do the data tags so that people are the right candidates are applying and appearing on the right cert lists, that we're able to make more bulk hires from that, having those clarity in those job announcements, and then the added layers of those technical assessments or professional skills assessments onto that, to really make sure that people are understanding what they're applying to and what they're going to be doing in that work role. And I hope that, actually junior talent or just experienced professionals, just generally speaking, some people might not be a great test taker, and there's certainly reasonable accommodations and stuff to help those people out. But if 1 + 1 is 2 or 2 + 2 is 4, you need to be able to answer the question and answer the mail, because you got to perform a job. There's going to be expectations once you're on this side. So I think it's making sure that, the right people is not you wrote a really strong resume and the person was able to understand it, or even if they didn't understand it and somehow they made it through, that these assessments help make sure that it is the right people making it through to hire the quality candidates, so they feel fulfilled and can contribute to the mission in the way that was needed.
Yeah, and I think I'll jump in here and say where I've seen things go right is through the subject matter expert qualification assessment process, which actually brings SMEs more heavily into the discussion around the job analysis, performing the job analysis, developing technical or occupational questionnaires that are specific to the role and position that will be performed, coupled with technical assessments or exercises that can be delivered via your email inbox. And then I've seen great success with what GSA has done in their digital core program, where they took the SME process, the SMEQA process, but they also did a phenomenal job of very clearly articulating, here under this track,